A podcast, you say?
I ask the young man as he stands on the threshold of the sliding door to the guardhouse.
Yes, sir.
The young man replies. He opens a bag and shows me a bunch of electronic stuff that I cannot identify.
What's that?
I ask, blocking his way.
Well, I have a microphone, my recorder, cords for the... No.
I interrupt.
What's a podcast? Oh, right,
he says.
It's like radio. Like radio? But not radio?
I ask.
Yes, it's an audio program for the computer,
he says.
Radio on the computer,
I say and shake my head.
I don't have a computer. You don't?
He asks. He's starting to fidget. The night is getting to him. I don't blame the young man. Standing outside, exposed to whatever may be lurking in the forest around us, so close to a gate that basically vibrates with ill intent, all of that would make me fidget too. But I'm used to it. I look over at the gate, and it's 20 feet of iron magnificence. Without the gate, there would be nothing between us and, well, what's on the other side? I suppose that goes both ways, though. I let the young man stew in his growing fear for a couple more seconds, then stand aside and gesture for him to come in.
Have a seat,
I say, and point to a chair and small table behind me. I have to move over so he can squeeze past. There isn't much room for the two of us in the guardhouse. Then I close the door and return my attention to the night.
Thank you,
the young man says and takes his seat. I remain standing by the door and the sliding window, my eyes on the gate.
Nice place,
the young man says, trying to be polite.
How kind of you,
I reply. The table and the chair are the only pieces of furniture allowed in the Watchman's house. It's called a house, but it's really nothing more than a shack. It's a simple guardhouse. It contains a table and chair, a standing desk by the sliding window, a cabinet bolted to the wall, a telephone bolted up next to the cabinet, and an ever-changing picture of the city's mayor on the opposite wall. This is where I serve. I glance over my shoulder at the young man as he sets up his electronic equipment on the table. A large microphone with its own table stand, a small rectangle with a multitude of buttons, some cords, pretty much what he said was in the bag. I go back to my watch as he connects everything.
Test 1, 2,
the young man says. I assume he is dictating into the microphone. My eyes are focused on my work.
All right, it appears to be working fine,
the young man says.
Your guardhouse is actually great for recording. Is it?
I reply, not really interested in the answer.
The acoustics are perfect,
he says.
Acoustics,
I say under my breath. The young man says he wants to stay all night and truly learn what a midnight watchman does. If that is the case, then he will understand acoustics very soon.
First, let me thank you for this opportunity,
the young man says.
I'm looking forward to learning everything. Do you really want to know?
I ask for the first time. It will not be the last.
Yes, that's why I'm here,
he says.
I work for the, you know.
He snaps his fingers a couple of times.
I know,
I say, letting him off the hook. There's silence as he fidgets with his electronics. Then he claps his hands.
Okay, so if you don't mind, please state your name and occupation for the record,
he says.
I am the Midnight Watchman,
I say. When he doesn't respond, I look over at him. He's waiting patiently for something. I tilt my watchman's cap back and raise an eyebrow.
Oh, that's it?
The young man asks.
Could I get your real name? For the record. For the record?
I ask.
For the record,
he says, nodding.
The Midnight Watchman,
I repeat. The young ones these days aren't so bright, I have noticed.
Yes, I understand that is your job title,
he says.
But could I get your actual name too, please?
I take a deep breath and scan the area around the gate. Seeing no issues or signs of coming issues, I let the breath out and face the young man, my arms crossed over my chest. One of the brass buttons on the end of the sleeve of my watchman's coat snags on a seam, and I have to carefully pluck it free. It ruins the dramatic effect I was going for, so I let my arms fall to my sides.
Being a midnight watchman is who I am and what I am. Nothing else, I say. That's the first rule of this job. How do you mean?
He asks.
Do you really want to know?
I ask.
Yes, of course,
he says, with way too much enthusiasm and a little impatience.
I'm here to do a feature on the inner workings of the boundaries of the city, the places the majority of citizens never see. That's my assignment. That's your assignment,
I echo.
Yes,
he says, a little unsure.
To discover the purpose of areas like this, places that, while not technically off limits, citizens of the city might not visit on their own. With good reason in most cases, I suspect,
I say, and return my attention to the night.
There are parts of the city, parts of existence, that are best left undisturbed.
I see movement in the bushes across from the guardhouse. My hand goes to the large nightstick that I keep propped up next to the door. It's about 2 feet long and 3 inches thick with a good, strong handle wrapped in hide. A rope dangles from the handle, and I slip my wrist through it.
Come on, you bastard,
I mutter as I lift the nightstick and feel its brutal heft.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that,
the young man says.
Can you speak up for the microphone?
I ignore his request. My eyes scan the bushes. There's a small rustling, then the bushes go still. I do my job and count to 12. When nothing happens, I relax a little and set the nightstick back down.
What was that about?
The young man asks.
Doing my job,
I say.
Was someone out there?
He asks.
Someone? No,
I reply.
Oh,
he says and waits. I do not elaborate. He'll learn soon enough.
So you were saying something about how there are parts of the city that are best left undisturbed,
he says.
Do you mean this gate? Can you talk about that? Do you really want to learn about it all?
I ask. He has no idea that the answer to his question is the most important answer of his life.
Yes, of course,
the young man says.
That's why I'm here.
A feeling of sadness fills my heart. And yes, I do have a heart. Please remember that when this is all concluded.
All right,
I say and smile at him.
I can tell you about it all.
Deep down, I pray he doesn't ask the next question, even though my gut is telling me it's exactly the question he wants to ask. But such is the way of the midnight watchman.
Do you have a wife or husband?
I ask the young man, hoping to divert him, giving him a chance I was not given.
No, I'm single,
he says.
Children?
I ask.
No children,
he says. I hear his enthusiasm waning already. The youth these days have no patience. It will be a long night with this one.
Let me ask you this,
he begins.
What you hear and see tonight, you may not want to share with the public,
I say, and nod at the microphone.
Well, I feel that what people do with the information they are given is completely up to them,
he continues.
I report on subjects that most people do not have the time or the means to explore. There is so much about the city that is a mystery. As it should be, I say. Are you new to the city? Yes,
he says.
Well, sort of. I was born here but left for school when I was young. After my parents died, I returned and moved into the family house. It's been about 2 years now. You aren't sure? I ask. No, it's been 2 years, he says. I think the city will do that to you, I say and leave it up to him to define his own that. Now, getting back to the gate, the young man says. You had mentioned how parts of the city should be left undisturbed. But before that, you said being the midnight watchman is who and what you are. Let's expand on that first. so the listeners have a better understanding of what you do and why you do it.
I nod. He smiles. Some of his enthusiasm is returning. That's unfortunate.
You said that was the first rule,
He continues.
Is that just a term of speech? Or are there actual rules that you must follow? There are rules to every job,
I reply.
Yes, I know. But do you have a set of rules as a midnight watchman? Rules unique to your profession?
He presses.
Yes,
I say and close my eyes. I take another deep breath and let it out.
there are 15 distinct rules to being a midnight watchman. Once you learn all 15, then you are qualified to take over as midnight watchman. Oh, interesting,
He says.
Is it like a training course you go through? No.
I say and open my eyes. I scan the night again, just to be sure nothing has snuck up on us while I took those brief seconds to rest my sorrowful eyes.
I learned from the previous midnight watchman. So like passing of the torch, you'd say?
He asks.
Yes,
I say.
just like that.
I look out at the handful of actual torches staked on either side of the gate. The flames sputter and dance in the night to an unheard, unfelt breeze that never stops.
And is that how it's always done?
He asks.
Passing the rules down from one midnight watchman to the other? That's how it's done.
I say.
Oh, this is great.
The young man says.
The listeners will love how the essence of the job has been passed down from midnight watchman to midnight watchman. We'll see how much you feel like sharing when it's over.
I say.
So, these rules?
He asks.
Tell me about those. Are you sure?
I ask, giving him an out. It's the last one he gets.
100%.
He replies.
I want to hear all of the rules and anything else you have to say. I'm here for all of it. Yes, you are,
I say. I watch the flames flicker and wave, and I think back on when I first became the midnight watchman.
The first rule, like I said,
I say as I start in.
is that the midnight watchman is who you are and what you are. How so?
He asks.
It just is.
I say and shrug.
There is no more explanation to it. I am the midnight watchman. What I do is what the midnight watchman does. That is the first rule. Who I am and what I am is the midnight watchman. Nothing else. Okay,
He responds, and I know he's not getting it. I don't blame him. It's a concept you don't comprehend until you have to.
so then what does the midnight watchman do exactly?
He asks.
Those are the other 14 rules.
I say.
Some I can explain. Some I'll have to demonstrate. And some you have to experience on your own. Oh, I'm only here to observe,
He says.
not participate.
A laugh bubbles up from my throat, but I hold it back and nod at him.
Rule number 2,
He asks.
never leave your post.
I say.
Oh, that's easy enough.
He says.
It's what you're hired for, right? Hired.
I say and chuckle.
Right. Yes. So, how long is a shift?
He asks.
It varies.
I say.
Can you give me a ballpark?
He asks.
It's long.
I say.
That's about as much as I can tell you. Do you get breaks for meals or to use the bathroom?
He asks.
Sorry if that sounds crass, but if I don't ask, I'll get emails from listeners wanting to know. Then usually someone will start arguing about workers' rights in the comments and it becomes a whole thing.
I stare at him. He smiles at me. I keep staring at him. His smile slips slightly.
I don't know what any of that is,
I say.
but to answer your question, I do get to eat. Someone will bring me a meal at some point. Oh, you get it delivered?
He asks.
I didn't know drive and deliver comes all the way out here. I don't know what that is,
I say.
but someone will come by and hand me a meal. They may bring one for you too tonight, since you're here. Me? I didn't order anything.
He says.
Is there a menu I can choose from? No.
I say. He waits.
So, what? Food just shows up?
He asks.
Yep.
I say. A twig snaps and I grab the nightstick again.
You keep doing that,
He says.
holding that stick. Is that all you are armed with? It does the trick.
I say.
Be quiet. Oh, sorry. I was just trying to find out. Shut up.
I say in a tone that gets him to clamp his lips together instantly. Another twig snaps. Then I hear a footstep on the old, cracked pavement. I place my free hand on the door, slip my wrist through the nightstick's strap, turn and look at the young man and say,
Rule number 3 is if you hear something, you count to 12, wait and observe. If you keep hearing something after the 12 count, then you investigate.
A third twig snaps, and I slide the door open and step out into the night with my nightstick in hand. I look about the area, my ears on alert, my eyes wide open. All I see are the trees, the watchman's house, the gate and the torches, the road that leads up to the gate, and a 7-foot-tall shadow standing about 40 yards down the road on my side of the gate.
The 4th rule is always keep your stick with you when you leave the watchman's house,
I say as I step out onto the road.
Once you step outside, you are fair game, and they know it. Fair game?
He asks.
What does that mean? I said there were some rules you have to observe.
I say and take a couple of steps toward the shadow.
Should I come outside?
He asks.
Can you observe from where you are?
I ask and take a couple more steps. The shadow doesn't move.
Let me grab my gear,
He says. I sigh and roll my eyes. I can hear him scrabbling around in the guardhouse. Then he appears again with his microphone in one hand and that rectangle of buttons and knobs in the other.
I'm recording,
He says.
Go ahead. Thank you for the permission,
I say, and take a few more steps. The shadow still hasn't moved. I take a few more steps, and I catch just a hint of a face at the top of the shadow. It's a long, drawn face, stretched more than a face should be stretched, but so is the entire shadow. After a few more steps, I can see the arms dangling at the sides. I see the spindly legs that are almost the whole body. I see the tight torso. And then I see the top hat.
Grimlow,
I say.
You are not wanted here.
Hello, Watchman.
The shadow says.
It is good to be remembered. How many years has it been?
50 or 60,
I say.
but I can never forget a monstrosity such as you. What are you doing here?
I have come to return home.
Grimlow says.
Open the gate for me, Watchman.
No.
I say.
I must insist.
It says.
What are you doing here, Grimlow?
I ask again.
Oh, are we going for the rule of threes?
It responds.
Such base magics. Below even a person with your stature.
Grimlow bursts out laughing, and I watch that top hat shake and shiver on top of its pointy head. I wait.
I already told you.
Grimlow says.
I am here to return home.
You were cast out of your home, Grimlow.
I say.
You can stop saying my name.
It says, hissing.
Names have power.
I reply.
Once you have been ejected through a gate, you are no longer welcome back to the other side. You know this. There were reasons for your expulsion, and I—
Lies!
Grimlow roars. The trees surrounding us shake and rustle their leaves with nervousness. I don't blame them. Gripping my nightstick tighter, I close the distance between us. 5 steps, 10, 20, 30 steps, and we are almost face to face. I stare up at the ashen skin and the top hat.
You were wearing that the day you came through.
I say.
Have you been wearing it ever since?
Of course not.
Grimlow says and sneers down at me.
That would be weird.
I smile up at him.
Last chance, Grimlow.
I say.
Answer truthfully, or I will have to act.
But I haven't done anything.
Grimlow says and shrugs his slender shoulders. His arms wriggle and flop about like snakes hanging from a tree branch.
You have approached a gate without permission, Grimlow.
I say.
With intent to cross through, despite having been expelled. Answer my question truthfully, or there will be consequences.
I have come to kill them all.
It says.
There, I say. That wasn't so hard. You have answered truthfully by the third asking of the question. You are free to go.
But I do not intend to go.
It says.
I intend to.
I strike quickly with the nightstick, bringing the ancient oak against Grimlow's left leg, just where a knee should be, with as much force as I can muster. The creature screams and falls back, drawing its leg up to its body. Grimlow cradles the leg in its arms like a baby, which is quite a feat of flexibility.
Why did you do that?
Grimlow cries as he hops backward on one leg.
That hurt.
I can make the hurting stop,
I say, and raise the nightstick over my head.
forever if you want. You answered the 3 truthfully, so you have earned a chance at retreat. I have given you 1 chance. How many more chances shall I give?
Even though the creature's eyes are lost in the deep shadows of its thin face, I know they have narrowed and are filled with nothing but hatred for me.
The Midnight Watchman shows no mercy and gives no second chances,
Grimlow says, as if from memory.
Then you have a choice to make,
I say.
now.
My nightstick is still raised above my head, but my arm is not tired. I can hold it in that position for eternity if needed. It's my job,
I shall withdraw,
Grimlow says.
but I will not forget this.
Nor will I
say.
Good night, Grimlow.
Drink piss and choke on it.
Grimlow says, then dissipates into the night. I lower the nightstick.
Where'd he go?
The young man asks, directly behind me. I do not jump. A midnight watchman does not startle easily. Instead, I turn on my heel and look at the young man. He is shaking with fear and adrenaline, but he is not running or hiding or cowering or showing signs of going mad. Good. The kid may have a chance after all.
It left.
I say, walking past the young man and back to the guardhouse.
Who was he?
The young man asks, trailing on my heels.
It.
I say.
That was not a he, a she, or a them. It was an it. I don't understand.
The young man says as I enter the guardhouse and set my nightstick in its place. The young man scrambles up into the guardhouse, the rectangle clutched close to his chest while the microphone is jammed out at me.
Tell me what that was, please,
He says.
so the listeners can understand what just happened. It's radio,
I reply.
They couldn't see what just happened. I'll explain it in detail later,
He says.
but having it directly from you would be a great help. A lesser demon that was expelled from hell over 50 years ago returned tonight and tried to convince me to let it pass through the gate without authorization,
I say.
So I confronted the lesser demon and changed its mind. Will that help your listeners?
The young man blinks at me. The look on his face shifts from one of confusion to one of disbelief to one of wariness. He fears I am mad. He would not be the first,
I'm sorry.
he says and takes his time before he continues.
Did you call that person a lesser demon? An it,
I insist.
not a person. Do not allow yourself to believe that thing has any humanity in it. It is as far removed from humanity as an earthworm is. Except earthworms are beneficial. Demons like Grimlow have no benefit on this side of the gate. It must have kept a low profile all these decades, otherwise the city would have found a way to dispose of it. Expelled demons are not a welcome kind in the city. They seed doubt and discord. They pit citizens against citizens. They make deals with suckers and fools. They are chaos when the city wants order.
The young man blinks at me some more. He is close to deciding if I am mad or not. Once he makes his decision, his fate will be sealed.
You're serious.
He states.
You believe what you just said. I would be a poor excuse for a midnight watchman if I didn't believe what I just said.
I respond.
The question is whether or not you believe what I just said. You mentioned decades.
he continues after a moment or two to ponder what I have said.
That this Grimlow was expelled decades ago. Yes,
I say.
I remember it well. But you can't be more than 40 years old,
He says. Ah, I see what he's doing. He is fixating on my age as an anchor for reason. If he can sort out what he has heard against what he sees, then he can make sense of what he just witnessed. If only it was that easy for him.
I'm over 40,
I say and lean against the standing desk. I return my attention to the scene outside the window. I sigh.
You say you have been back in the city for 2 years. Is that right? About that, yes,
He replies.
about that.
I echo.
And in those 2 years, you haven't noticed what's the word? Demographics. Yes, demographics. In those 2 years, you haven't noticed the demographics of the city? How do you mean?
He asks.
The demographics of the city's residents? Yes,
I say.
and the transients that pass through now and again. The city is a wonderful place, filled with many wonderful people,
He states.
Okay,
I say and study the night outside the window.
I see. See what?
He asks with a tinge of annoyance.
You aren't being very helpful, Mr. Midnight Watchman.
I say.
Or just Watchman will do. But what is your name?
He almost shouts.
Your actual name?
I turn my focus back to him. He takes an involuntary step back. Good for him,
That is my name.
I say.
That is my job. Rule number 1.
The young man mutters, then goes to the table and collapses into the chair. He sets his electronics down and starts rubbing his hands together. Once more, I turn back to the window into the scene outside. Trees blow in the impossible, secret breeze. The torches sputter and wave. The gate stands there as it always does. I see nothing else. I hear nothing else.
These rules,
The young man says from behind me.
you said there are 15 of them? Yes.
I reply without looking at him.
So far, there is the first rule, which is you are the Midnight Watchman. That is your job, that is your name, nothing else.
He replies.
Correct.
I reply.
The second rule is never leave your post.
He says.
Yes.
I say. He's learning.
The third rule was,
He stops and thinks for a while. I let him ponder as I study the woods. Something is out there. I can feel it. I haven't heard anything since Grimlow, but I know when the guardhouse is being watched. I know when I'm being watched.
if you hear something, you count to 12, wait and observe. If you keep hearing something after the 12 count, then you investigate.
The young man says triumphantly.
I need to write these down. No,
I say and tap my head without looking at him.
you will remember. And once you do, then you never forget. I don't understand.
He says.
You will.
I reply. There. Oh, I see it. Hidden in the holly bush that stands exactly 13 feet from the gate's right side. 2 yellow eyes watching the guardhouse. I get to an 8 count before the eyes blink.
Is everything all right?
The young man asks.
You tensed up. What was the fourth rule?
I ask, and give him a hint as I grab for my nightstick once more.
Always keep your nightstick with you when you leave the Watchman's house.
He says without hesitation. I hear him gasp and I smile.
I remembered that instantly. I didn't even have to think about it. Good for you.
I say. It is not good for him. The yellow eyes blink again but do not reopen.
Damn it.
I mutter.
Where'd you go? What's out there?
The young man asks.
Trouble.
I say.
More trouble than that Grimlow person?
He asks. With a shake of my head, I risk a glance back at the young man.
As I said, Grimlow is not a person.
I say.
Right, of course.
The young man says.
He is a demon expelled from...
The entire guardhouse shakes as something rams into the side.
Damn!
I shout. I shouldn't have let the young man distract me. I could have avoided this if I'd done my job and ignored all the questions.
Stay here!
I yell and shove the door open. Standing outside the guardhouse, maybe only 10 or so feet away, is a creature with big yellow eyes. big yellow teeth, and matted fur so thick that it looks like plated armor.
Watchman,
The thing growls low in its throat.
let me through the gate.
Are you on the list?
I ask from the doorway, my nightstick held at my side, but in a way that I know the creature can see it easily.
You have to be on the list. What is that?
The young man asks from directly behind my left shoulder.
Stay back.
I hiss at him.
Do not make sudden movements.
Wise advice to give the young one, Watchman.
The creature says.
You haven't answered my question.
I say.
Are you on the list?
You will ask me once more before you attack me.
The creature states.
So I shall reply now. Yes, Watchman, I am on the list.
Don't lie to me, beast.
I say.
I'm not.
The creature growls. Drool drips from its mouth and sizzles on the pavement.
Lying to a watchman is a fool's game.
You aren't wrong there.
I say.
Let me check.
I step back and run into the young man.
Sorry.
He says, and scrambles out of my way as I reach over to the desk and grab a clipboard from the middle shelf. With my nightstick firmly in one hand, I thumb through the clipboard's pages with my other hand.
Let's see. What is tonight?
I mutter to myself.
The eve of the sacrificial lamb.
The creature says. I glance up at him and raise an eyebrow.
Is it? Already?
The creature shrugs. I return my attention to the pages on the clipboard.
Ah, here you are.
I say with surprise.
Donald Connolly, yes?
Yes.
The creature says.
May I pass through now, Watchman? I do not want to be late for the sacrifice.
Of course.
I say and place the clipboard back on its shelf.
Let me open the gate for you. Oh, wow.
The young man says, and I hear him scramble for his electronics once again.
I'm coming with. Hold on.
I say, and place a hand back to stop him.
Not yet.
My hand rests against the young man's chest, and I can feel his heart beating quickly. If I can feel it, then Donald Connolly can hear it.
Donald?
I ask.
Yes, Watchman.
He replies.
This young man is an observer this evening.
I say.
I would appreciate it if you did not tear his body apart when he exits the guardhouse.
But he sounds so alive.
Donald replies.
And he smells delicious.
I'm sorry. What did it just say?
The young man asks.
He. His name is Donald Connolly, and he is a he. Oh, sorry about that.
The young man says loudly.
Easy mistake.
Donald replies.
Nice young man. Good manners.
Which is why I don't want you to eat him.
I say.
Do I have your assurance?
But I haven't eaten since 11. And I'd rather not go to the sacrifice on an empty stomach.
Donald answers.
So I don't have your assurance then?
I ask.
You do not.
He says.
I am sorry. But if he steps outside that guardhouse, I will tear his body apart and feast upon his shredded flesh.
You're staying here.
I say to the young man. He doesn't argue. Leaving the guardhouse with my nightstick in hand, I give Donald a wide berth. He'd be insane to attack me now. He's on the list. But rule number 7 is you assume nothing. As the old adage states, assuming is for idiots who would like their heads ripped off and shoved up their asses. I point the nightstick at the left side of the gate.
Stand over there, please.
I say to Donald. The smell coming off of him is like a damp dog and rancid blood. I give him a warm smile and wait for him to comply. But his eyes are locked onto the guardhouse.
I really, truly am hungry, Watchman.
He says.
The young man is off limits, as long as he is in the guardhouse.
I say.
You know the rule, Donald.
Stupid rule.
He says and shakes his head. Then he drops to all fours and strides to the place I had previously indicated.
Is this satisfactory, Watchman?
It is.
I say and move to the center of the gate. I raise my hands over my head.
Would you like me to hold your nightstick for you, Watchman?
Donald asks.
It looks heavy and awkward.
No, thank you.
I say.
Suit yourself.
Donald says, and sits down on his haunches to wait. in a language even I do not understand. I recite the words that were taught to me so many decades ago. There is a flash of light around the gate, then a loud clang as the lock disengages and the gate's two halves swing outward toward me. I take several steps back as the gate opens, then I lower my hands and turn to face Donald.
Your entrance to hell has been approved,
I say.
Good luck with the sacrifice.
Thank you, Watchman.
Donald says, and strides through the gate.
I'll see you again after a few days on my return.
Make sure you are on the list,
I say. Then my eyes are drawn to movement a couple of yards past the gate. I rush forward and grab one of the halves of the gate and shove it hard as I recite the same exact words, but in reverse order.
What is it?
Donald asks, then screams as a thick tentacle grabs him and yanks him from the road and into the black and dead trees that lurk on the hell side of the gate.
Damn it!
I shout. The gate is closing too slowly. Donald's screams are cut short just before his body is flung across the road and high up into the dead and black trees. Then several tentacles shoot through the gate at me. I slam my nightstick down on one, and purple blood spurts up from where I have crushed it. Two tentacles wrap around my legs, and I strike at them over and over again until they let go. But those were a distraction, so that another tentacle could grab me about the throat and start to squeeze. My airway is cut off instantly, and I know my head will pop off in seconds. I bring my nightstick down on the tentacle again and again, but it refuses to release me.
Let him go!
The young man shouts, suddenly at my side. I would ask him what the hell he thinks he's doing, but I have no breath. Spots dance before my eyes.
Let him go!
The young man shouts again and dodges a tentacle that swipes for his head. I feel cold plastic slip between the tentacle and my skin. Then there is a hard pulling and twisting. The blood in my skull throbs with intense pressure. I can feel my head about to pop. Then the pressure is gone, and I can breathe once more. I do not waste time. I flail wildly with my nightstick, connecting with anything in my way.
Ow!
The young man cries, then stumbles back. He pulls something with him, and I see it is one of the cords from his electronics. A tentacle shoots for his neck, and I strike it aside with my nightstick.
No more!
I shout into the night.
You are not authorized to pass!
More tentacles come for me, but stop just an inch from my face. A roar of frustration and anger fills the air. I glance past the tentacles and see that the gate has closed on them.
Get back!
I warn the young man as I retreat to the guardhouse. He doesn't argue. He retreats with me, and we hurry inside the guardhouse just as the tentacles on our side of the gate explode from the pressure. Purple goo coats the outside of the window.
3 warnings or 3 questions,
the young man says. I turn, and he is seated at the table, his electronics in disarray before him.
What was that you said?
I ask, knowing exactly what he said.
The 5th rule,
He says.
3 warnings or 3 questions. That is what you give or ask. 3 warnings or 3 questions. Very good,
I say.
And do you know what the 6th rule is? Never back down,
He says.
Close,
I reply as I rub my neck. The pain is gone and the swelling is already dissipating. I'll be back to normal in a minute or so.
Except you are being too kind. Too kind?
He asks, then thinks for a minute. I really need to go out and clean the purple goo off the window, but I want the young man to finish his thought process. He's making progress, and I do not want him to slip backwards now.
No second chances?
He asks.
And no mercy,
I say.
That is the 6th rule. No mercy, no second chances,
He says. He glances past me at the goo-coated window.
I can see why. That?
I look at the goo and laugh.
That was an overt attack. Once that happens, you do not need to ask 3 questions or give 3 warnings or worry about second chances or mercy. Once an attack happens, all bets are off. What rule number is that?
He asks.
10.
I say.
7 is assume nothing. 8 is anyone within this guardhouse has sanctuary. 9 is report violations immediately. Report? You have to make reports?
He asks.
We all answer to someone,
I say.
Speaking of,
I lean over and pick up the telephone handset.
Hello, Watchman. How may I direct your call?
The voice on the other end says.
Violations Department,
I say.
Please hold.
The operator responds. Several loud clicks sting my ear, but I don't pull the handset away, despite how uncomfortable the noises are.
Thank you, by the way.
I say to the young man as I wait for the connection to be made.
You saved my butt back there. Of course,
the young man responds.
It seemed like the right thing to do. Explain,
I say. He frowns at me, and I point at the handset.
This could take a while, so please tell me why it seemed like the right thing to do. Well, you were in trouble,
he says.
And you could have been killed,
he says.
And?
I repeat.
And those tentacles were from the other side, and they did not have authorization to come through the gate, so they had to be stopped,
he says in one long breath. Then his eyes go wide, and he blinks at me a few times.
I don't know why I said all that. Because it's true,
I say, then hold up a finger.
Midnight Watchman, state your location,
a voice says on the other end of the line. Despite my decades of experience, I have yet to decipher the gender or species belonging to the voice. It merely sounds like gravel being crushed under a car's tires while it flees a burning town, or something like that.
Gate 2,
I reply to the voice.
Midnight Watchman of Gate 2, please report your violation,
the voice says.
A grub master,
I say.
It is camped out directly on the other side of the gate and has assaulted and killed a traveler.
An authorized traveler?
The voice asks.
Donald Connolly,
I say.
He was on the list and going to the eve of the...
His destination is unimportant.
The voice interrupts.
You say this Donald Connolly is deceased?
Yes,
I reply.
His body is now hanging from a tree on the other side of the...
The location of the corpse is unimportant.
The voice interrupts again.
Has the Gruff Master been pacified? Is the gate closed and undamaged?
All is good now,
I say.
Thanks to tonight's observer.
Elaborate,
the voice says.
The observer intervened and was able to free me from one of the Grub Master's tentacles,
I say.
Very brave of him.
Noted,
the voice says.
Is there any additional information you wish to report?
No, that is...
I start to say, but I'm met with a loud buzzing in my ear as the call is cut off. I hang up the phone and look at the goo-coated window.
I should clean that,
I say. I grab the door's handle but stop as a loud knocking fills the guardhouse.
Oh dear,
the young man says.
What's that? Dinner, I suppose,
I say and open the door. A short, cloaked and hooded figure is standing there with the steaming delivery bag in its gloved hands. It holds out the bag, and I take it with a nod of my head.
Empty this on the table while I get it a tip,
I say.
Okay,
the young man says, and warily takes the bag from me as I turn to my desk.
Let's see,
I say as I search my desk.
I have a half pencil with a chewed up eraser.
The cloaked figure hisses. The young man startles and moves as far away from the door as possible. I grin, but don't stop hunting for a tip.
A piece of paper receipt from the handyman who came to fix the hole in the roof?
The cloaked figure waves its gloved hands at me.
No? Huh. Oh, yes, I forgot.
I pluck the item from the top of the desk and hand it to the cloaked figure. It snatches the bent and twisted paperclip from me and clutches it to its chest, then holds a hand out to the young man.
It needs the delivery bag back,
I say.
Oh, right. Of course,
the young man says, and picks up the bag from the table. He stands there, looking from me to the bag and back.
Well, hand it over,
I say and point at the cloaked figure.
It has other deliveries to make.
The cloaked figure hisses in agreement.
Sorry,
the young man says and basically shoves the bag at the cloaked figure. Despite being unable to see its face or eyes or any feature under its hood, I can tell the cloaked figure is rolling its eyes. I assume it has eyes. I've never seen them personally. The cloaked figure takes the bag and slinks off to its moped. The small rack on the back of the moped is piled 20 feet high with delivery bags. The figure gets the moped turned around and putters off into the night.
What was it?
The young man asks once the moped is lost from sight.
I'm sorry?
I ask as I close the door and turn to the food on the table.
The delivery driver.
The young man explains.
What was it? Who? Todd?
I reply. I open one of the containers and take a big sniff.
Well, I'll be. Isn't that nice? I rarely get Italian. Looks like pesto fettuccine in this container. Todd?
The young man asks.
Its name is Todd? Yes. It was on its cloak, didn't you see?
I say, and open the second container.
Shrimp scampi. We are lucky tonight, that's for sure.
Without bothering to open the last two containers, I dish myself up some scampi and some fettuccine.
But what was it?
The young man asks, his voice shrill.
Calm down,
I say as I take a big bite of pasta.
Todd's a wraith, just like all delivery drivers. Haven't you gotten food delivered in the city?
The young man stands there looking stunned.
Well, yeah, but I never see them,
he says.
They always leave the food on the front steps, then leave. Can't do that out here,
I say around another mouthful of pasta.
You leave food out, and it attracts things. Like that tentacle thing you had to call about?
The young man asks.
What did you call it? A grub master? They're the worst,
I say, as I swallow my third huge mouthful.
Oh, this is so good. They really pulled out the stops tonight. Usually it's peanut butter sandwiches, a persimmon, and sometimes crab chips. This grub master,
the young man continues.
This grub master? Are there more of them?
He's not going to let this go. All right, he asks questions. I have answers.
Tons more,
I say.
They're all over the road to hell. You can find them lurking close by any of the gates. But this one decided to attack a traveler. Why?
The young man asks.
A very good question,
I say. We eat for a minute or two. I feel better after a little food is in my belly. I'm more willing to, well, help isn't the right word. Assist? Yes. More willing to assist the young man with his future.
Which rule are we on?
I ask.
11,
the young man says.
Rule 11. Are you sure it's not 12?
I reply, testing him.
It's 11,
the young man says.
Are you sure?
I ask.
Yes,
the young man replies, getting irritated.
10 was once an attack happens, all bets are off. But you didn't say what 11 was.
That shrillness is returning, and I wonder if maybe he's been through too much. I had hopes for this one, but sometimes they don't work out.
Always tip the delivery driver,
I say, and set my bowl down.
I didn't say that? No,
the young man insists.
Interesting,
I say, amused at his irritation. He's starting to care. I look up from my plate and see the young man is staring at the food containers.
Is there a problem?
I ask.
I just didn't realize wraiths delivered all the food in the city,
he says.
And that is a problem because...
I ask.
Is it sanitary?
He asks. I can't help but laugh at him.
What's so funny?
He snaps. He's annoyed, obviously, but I don't particularly care. It's been a weird night, which means it will only get weirder. That's not a formal rule, but it is a personal rule. When shit gets weird at the gate, like a grub master going rogue, then odds are the night will just get weirder. The young man is glaring at me while I laugh. I shake my head and take a breath.
Sorry,
I say.
To answer your question, yes, the food is sanitary. That's why wraiths are used. No one can tamper with the food if it is being delivered by a wraith. Is that Rule 13?
He asks.
What? No,
I reply.
Or maybe it is. But it's not a Midnight Watchman rule. It could be a wraith rule. I have no idea if they have formalized rules or not. All I know is, once a wraith takes possession of the food, then it cannot harm the individual it is being delivered to. What if it's poisoned before the wraith takes it?
He asks.
Holy Hades, kid.
I exclaim.
Do I look like a wraith? Ask the Wraith Guild what their rules are. I don't keep up with that. I have my own job to do.
I glance at the window and at the purple goo.
Speaking of,
I say, and set my food down.
I need to clean that off. Is it safe to go out there?
He asks.
Never.
I say.
Is that another rule?
He asks.
No, that's life.
I say and leave the guardhouse. I take a deep breath of the night air and let it out slowly. The young man is starting to wear on me. He dealt with Donald fine. He hasn't gone crazy listening to the rules like most have. He was cool and collected and saved my ass from the grub master. It wasn't until the wraith showed up that he started to lose it a little. Fetching a bucket from the side of the guardhouse, I walk to a puddle of water off to the side of the road. The puddle never dries up and it never gets larger. It simply is a puddle by the side of the road forever. After filling the bucket from the puddle, I walk back to the guardhouse and toss the contents onto the purple goo. Only some of the goo washes off, which is what I expected. But the water will at least neutralize any burning effects when I wipe the window clean. So I fetch a rag from the same spot where I fetched the bucket and get to wiping. Cleaning the window takes a while. A long while. The goo fights the rag and tries to slither back up onto the glass. But this isn't the first time I've had to clean up after a grub master, so I know the proper strokes and technique needed to stay one wipe ahead of the goo. Occasionally, between wipes, I steal a glance inside at the young man. He still isn't eating. I can understand if his stomach is a little off due to the evening's events. But if it is the wraith thing, then that will be a problem. It takes 2 more buckets of puddle water and about 3 hours of wiping before I have the window as clean as it needs to be so the guardhouse can properly protect itself. Stepping inside the guardhouse, I'm not surprised to see that the young man is still sitting there staring at the food.
The good thing about quality Italian food is that it tastes great cold,
I say as I close the door and take my hat off to wipe my forehead. I worked up a good sweat cleaning that window. The young man doesn't say anything to me. He only stares at the food. Maybe he is already broken, and it was more of a slow break, like when you bend a green branch until it finally tears and snaps.
Care to know what rule number 12 is?
I ask, and lean back against the desk, my arms crossed, as I study the young man. He's paler than he was directly after the grubmaster attack. It has to be the wraith.
Sure,
the young man says, still staring at the food.
Deal with your issues,
I say. There's no response.
Did you hear me?
I ask.
Yes,
he replies, eyes still glued to the food.
Deal with all issues. No,
I say and move over to him. I snap my fingers right in his face and he jumps. Then he shakes his head and looks up at me.
There you are. Welcome back.
He begins to say, then closes his mouth and shakes his head again.
You were what?
I say.
And we're going to get to the bottom of it, because I just told you what Rule 12 is. Deal with the issues,
he says.
Again, no,
I say.
Rule 12 is deal with your issues. Your issues. Yours. What does that mean?
He asks.
Like with the wraiths,
I say.
You have issues with the wraiths for some reason. That's something you need to deal with. Me?
He asks.
Rule 12 isn't for me. None of the rules are. They're for you. They're for the Midnight Watchman.
After staring at him for a couple of seconds, I nod, smile, and return to lean against the desk.
Okay,
I say.
Do you want to know my issues? Only if you want to share them,
he says. He clumsily tries to move the containers of food so we can get his electronics set back up. I only lean and watch. Whatever state he's in, it's his mental state, not mine.
The cord,
he says when he finally manages to clear enough room for his microphone and his rectangle.
The mic cord, where is it? On the floor there by your feet,
I say, and point to a spot under the table. The young man leans down and picks up the cord. His whole body deflates at the sight of the cord.
It's ruined,
He says, as he holds the cord up for me to see.
Some of the goo got on it and ate through the plastic.
He stands up and rushes at me. I almost grab for my nightstick.
Do you have tape in the desk?
He asks.
I can repair the cord with some tape. No, you can't.
I say, but move aside so he can look anyway.
Sure I can.
He says when he finds the tape.
Masking tape. Not the best, but it should work temporarily. You can't repair that cord,
I say.
It's already been corrupted. No, I can fix it,
he says. He puts the cord in his mouth and tears back some of the melted plastic until he has a clear section that shows only the wires within. I watch him wrap the tape around and around the exposed wires until they are lost from sight. It's less amusing than sad to watch the young man desperately hold on to his notion of self. He's here to make a podcast, and a podcast is what he is going to do. I don't have the heart to tell him otherwise, so I lean back and observe as he gets everything connected and running once more.
There we go,
He announces triumphant.
It's recording. Is it?
I ask.
What's it recording? What do you mean?
He replies.
I mean just what I asked.
I say.
What is it recording? Us,
He says.
Are you sure about that?
I counter. He frowns, then presses a button on the rectangle. The red light turns off. Then he unplugs the mic and holds the rectangle up as he presses a different button. The screeches, clicks, hisses, and roars that represent the garbled language of the grubmaster fill the guardhouse. The young man's eyes go wide.
This must have been recorded earlier,
He says.
Hold on.
He presses the button again, and the noise stops. I patiently watch him fiddle with his electronics before he presses a button again and the red light comes back on.
Say something.
He says and points at the microphone.
Say anything. I'm testing the gear so I can show you that the splice works. You're testing something, all right,
I say and push off from the desk. I lean in close to the mic.
This recording is corrupted. It will not sound like this when it is played back.
I return to my spot at the desk and smile at the young man.
Go ahead.
I say and nod at his rectangle.
Play it. I will.
He responds defiantly. He presses the button again. It would be cruel of me to laugh at the look on his face when the garbled grubmaster language screeches from the rectangle.
What is this?
The young man asks.
That is me.
I say.
But because the cord is corrupted, what I said has been translated into the language of the grubmasters. It doesn't matter what you record or how you record it. As long as you use that cord, that is what it will sound like.
He frowns at the rectangle, then turns it off.
I didn't bring another cord,
He says.
I had a feeling that might be the case. Oh well, I'm sure you have plenty of good words from earlier in the night. But I'm supposed to record an entire shift,
He says. With a kind smile on my face, I say,
That's not possible. What do you mean?
He asks.
That's my assignment. I was supposed to come here and stay for an entire shift, recording everything that happens. Who gave you this assignment?
I ask.
The city?
He says. It sounds like a question.
Let's forget the recording for now,
I say. I can tell he's getting ramped up, and I don't want him to snap. We're so close.
I never finished with Rule 12. But I can't record it,
He says.
Doesn't matter,
I say. I don't add that it never did. Again, I'm trying to be as kind as possible to the young man.
Can I write it down?
He asks, and looks past me to the desk.
I'd rather you didn't,
I say.
This is just between you and me. Understood?
He pauses, then nods.
Good,
I say.
Rule 12. Deal with your issues.
I look out the window and scan the scene. There's nothing unusual that I can see.
When I was about your age,
I say as I continue to look out the window.
I did something I'm not proud of.
The words almost get caught in my throat. I'm not expecting it to be so hard to tell this story.
I had a wife and 2 children,
I continue.
1 boy and 1 girl. Twins, in fact. Born on a full moon. Auspicious, if you'd asked me then. Cursed, if you ask me now.
Is that movement outside behind the gate? Is the grub master back? Did it call for some friends to come help? I keep my eyes on the gate as I tell my story.
I had the most beautiful family,
I say.
My wife was amazing. I couldn't have been more proud of my children. Our life in our cabin in the woods was idyllic. You didn't live in the city?
The young man asks.
No,
I say.
we lived in the forest, and our life was perfect. Until
The young man asks. I smirk and snort.
you picked up on that, did you?
I say and nod.
Yes, until.
I still see some movement behind the gate, but I can't quite make out what it is. It's keeping its distance, at least.
One day, as these tales often go, I was out chopping firewood in the forest,
I say.
a mile or so from the cabin. I had just finished for the day and was packing up my sled when a woman appeared.
The memory stings even after so much time has passed.
The woman is gorgeous,
I continue.
even more so than my wife, which is saying a lot, believe me. Dressed in only flowing silks, she moved through the trees like a vision from above.
A flurry of movement from behind the gate occurs when I mention above.
I remember she spoke to me, but I cannot recall the words.
I say.
All I know is what she said sounded perfect to my ears. And when she disrobed, I knew I had been chosen for something great and wonderful. You didn't?
The young man interrupts.
I did.
I reply.
I made love to that woman all night long. I stank of her when I returned to my cabin at dawn. My wife was furious. She could smell the woman on me, and she railed and screamed and threw things at me. I tried to explain that what had happened was a gift, not a betrayal. But my wife was having none of that. The children were screaming and crying as we argued.
I stop and swallow hard.
Then I took my axe and stopped all the screaming.
I say.
I stopped all the crying.
I look back at the young man, and his eyes are wide and tears are running down his cheeks. The wide eyes I expected. The tears I did not.
I buried them that morning, and then went inside and fell fast asleep.
I continue, my eyes on his.
When I awoke, the woman was sitting in my wife's rocking chair, tending to the fire in the hearth. Except she wasn't the woman I saw the night before. She was the same, yes, but the woman I was looking at when I woke up was an old hag in soiled burlap, not a gorgeous young woman in flowing silks. A witch,
The young man states.
a witch,
I reply.
and not one of the good ones. This one had taken everything from me. My willpower, my love for my family, my everything.
The young man nods, and I'm surprised by the gesture.
Did she speak to you?
The young man asks.
She did.
I reply.
She told me I could stay with her if I liked. I would be her servant, her toy, her plaything, and she would be my new everything. What did you do?
The young man asks.
I got up from the bed that I used to share with my wife, fetched my axe, and chopped her into 100 pieces,
I say.
just like I did with my family. Except I didn't bury her. I burnt her in that same hearth, piece by piece.
Silence fills the guardhouse. I return my attention to the window.
She returned the next night as the young woman.
I say.
She asked me if I prefer that form, and if so, then she would maintain it as long as I pledged my entire soul to her. Did you agree to that?
The young man asks.
I chopped up the young woman too,
I say.
and I did that every night for a full month. I chopped up the hag, I chopped up the young woman, I chopped up every single form she took, and I burned all of her in that hearth.
There's no movement from behind the gate. But soon my attention is drawn down the road. I see the mist forming and know what is coming.
When I finally realized she would not relent,
I say, and pick up my nightstick. I grab the clipboard and tuck it under my arm.
Is there a problem?
The young man asks. I hold up my hand to silence him and continue.
When I realized she would come to my cabin every night until the end of time, I did the only thing I could think of to do. I burned my cabin down to the foundation that day, and then I sat in the ashes to wait.
I open the door and step out into the night.
She never returned,
I say.
I wandered the forest for weeks until someone from the city happened upon me and took pity. A week after that, I had this position. Where are you going?
The young man asks as I walk out onto the road and watch the mist get closer and closer.
Do you understand Rule 12?
I ask over my shoulder.
I think so,
He replies.
I don't know. Honesty is the best way forward,
I say.
Is that an official rule or one of your personal ones?
He asks.
Personal,
I say.
I've learned from experience. You will never go far in this job if you keep lying to yourself. It was decades upon decades before I could face what I did and tell that story to myself without lying. I'm sorry, but how many decades?
He asks, confused.
Never mind that,
I say, and aim my chin at the approaching mist.
Time for rule number 13.
The mist parts and the procession appears.
Who are they?
The young man asks.
The procession of the damned,
I say.
Every night, the mist will appear, and out of the mist, the damned will walk toward the gate. Rule 13 is we must do whatever it takes to protect the procession until it passes through the gate. What about the grub master?
The young man asks.
Yes, that has thrown a wrinkle into the evening,
I reply.
but it's part of the job.
6 columns of people get closer and closer. Each column is at least 30 people deep.
Are there always so many?
The young man asks. I laugh at all his questions, then look back at him and smile. He hasn't stepped foot outside the guardhouse.
This is average.
I say as I turn and go to the gate.
Some nights, there are 3 or 4 times this many. Some nights, there are only 3 or 4 people in the whole procession. It all depends on how many die in the week and how many of them are damned for all time. Why aren't you checking them off the list?
The young man asks.
I don't need to,
I say.
If someone is in the mix that is not supposed to be, the checklist will tell me. Is that a rule?
The young man asks.
More like a function of the rule,
I reply.
So all of these people will automatically be allowed through the gate?
The young man asks.
Yes.
I reply as I bring my hands up in that language I do not understand. I recite the words that were taught to me so many decades ago. For the second time tonight, there is a flash of light around the gate, and then a loud clang as the lock disengages and the 2 halves swing outward toward me. As I am supposed to, I stand aside and wait as the procession reaches me.
Hey!
The young man calls from the doorway.
It's that thing again!
How dare you call me that?
A voice shouts from inside the procession.
Damn it!
Grimlow!
I yell from the side of the procession just as the clipboard vibrates under my arm. The young man was faster than the clipboard. This bodes well for all.
You do not have authorization to pass through the gate!
I yell at Grimlow.
I gave you your chance! There is no second one!
None of the damned notice the dispute. Their dead, milky eyes are locked onto the gate opening as they walk in step with each other toward their fate. I press my way through the columns until I find Grimlow amongst them. It sneers at me with its stretched face.
Perhaps some of the damned would like to be double damned, Midnight Watchman.
Grimlow says. With a flick of its thin wrist, it produces a deadly sharp blade.
Take another step toward me, and I will begin to slit throats.
They are already dead.
I say to the thing.
You cannot kill them twice.
But I can defile their bodies before they reach damnation.
Grimlow says.
The Lord of Hell does not like the damned to be defiled by anyone other than he.
And you believe this action will grant you passage through the gate, Grimlow?
I ask and move closer.
You are a fool.
It is you who are the fool, Watchman.
The thing yells as it strikes out at the closest of the damned with its blade. I block the strike easily with my nightstick, and the blade falls to the ground. The feet of the passing damned kick the blade along the road, well out of reach of Grimlow. The thing watches the blade until it is lost from sight. Then it turns its face upon me and tips its top hat.
My apologies,
It says.
I shall retreat once again.
No.
I say as the columns of the procession flow around us.
You had your chance earlier. And what is rule number 6? No mercy, no second chances.
The young man says from the guardhouse.
You heard the lad.
I say and raise my nightstick high into the air.
But I am retreating! I am retreating!
Grimlow cries as it turns and tries to run. Except the columns do not part for its escape. The damned stay tightly lined up, and no matter how much Grimlow struggles to shove its way through them, it makes no progress. With its back to me, I bring the nightstick down on that top hat, crushing its slender, pointed skull underneath. Grimlow falls to the road and rolls over, its hands at the back of its head. It brings them around and stares at the blue blood that coats its fingers and palms.
You have undone me!
He says.
Not yet.
I say and bring the nightstick down on its face. But soon, it cries for mercy that it shall never receive. I stop after the 8th blow to its head. The procession continues around us as Grimlow's body melts into a pool of pestilence, then seeps through the cracks in the road, lost and gone forever.
Now you are undone.
I say, and make my way out of the procession. I walk over to the guardhouse to explain to the young man what he just witnessed. But, surprisingly, the young man's attention is not on me. It's on the gate and the procession moving through it.
I saw movement.
The young man says.
The Grubmaster is back, and it brought friends.
I race to the side of the gate and peer through, but my eyes do not see anything. Then one of the damned is plucked from the road and thrown high into the black and dead trees. It lands next to Donald's hanging body.
Son of a bitch!
I snarl and raise the nightstick.
Stop that at once!
More tentacles shoot out of the darkness, and more of the damned are snatched up and thrown into the trees.
Is there nothing you can do?
The young man asks.
No!
I say.
That side of the gate is not within the Midnight Watchman's jurisdiction. We are as helpless as the damned. But Rule 10 is once an attack happens, all bets are off.
The young man says.
So jurisdiction doesn't matter anymore. On this side of the gate, yes.
I say, and watch as more of the damned are flung into the tree branches, left to hang like dead and rotting fruit.
But I can only protect the damned on this side of the gate. If the tentacles cross the gate again, then I can take them on. But an attack on the other side is beyond my abilities. Ridiculous,
The young man says.
There has to be something we can do.
I grin when he says, we.
Rule number 9.
I say and walk back into the guardhouse.
Rule number 9.
He says as I push past him, toss the clipboard on the desk, and grab for the telephone.
Report violations immediately.
I lift the phone and go through the routine. While I wait to be connected, I study the young man. He is intently watching the violence being perpetrated against the damned. It appears that while I study him, he is studying the Grubmasters.
I know what to do,
he says, and goes to his electronics. I do not see what he does next, as I am caught up in reporting what is happening. The voice on the other end is as abrupt and dismissive as usual, although there does seem to be a slight spark of interest due to it being the procession of the damned being violated and not some individual passing through the gate alone. I can hear the young man saying something into his microphone, but again, my attention is on the voice on the other end of the phone. When I hang up, I frown as the young man disconnects his electronics and walks past me. He steps out of the guardhouse and approaches the gate.
What are you doing?
I ask as I follow him. The procession is almost done, and only a handful of the damned have made it past the gauntlet of Grubmaster tentacles. The young man holds up his rectangle and presses a button. The language of the Grubmaster erupts from the rectangle, and the tentacles freeze in mid-attack.
It's working,
the young man says to me, his voice filled with excitement. He keeps playing the recording of his corrupted voice. The tentacles release the damned they hold, then they pause. After a few more seconds, the tentacles begin to pluck the damned from the trees. They leave Donald up there, but the young man takes a step closer to the gate and holds the rectangle out, his hand almost crossing the threshold.
Careful,
I say, ready to snatch him back if he dares move an inch more. A tentacle plucks Donald's body from the tree and sets it on the road inside the gate. The retrieved bodies of the damned pick themselves up and continue their journey toward their fate in hell. The young man stands his ground. When the tentacles disappear and do not reappear for at least 5 minutes, the young man presses the button on the rectangle and turns to smile at me.
I figured it out,
He says.
What did you figure out?
I ask, as I lead him away from the gate so it does not close on us.
Rule number 7,
He says.
assume nothing. I don't understand.
I admit.
The Grub Masters.
The young man says, and takes a seat in the doorway of the guardhouse.
We assumed they were adults, but they weren't. They were adolescent Grub Masters. How did you know?
I ask, impressed.
They were playing with the damned,
The young man continues.
like children play with insects.
I put my hat back on and grin at the young man.
Very good.
I say.
I missed that entirely.
Then I point at the rectangle.
So what did you say in the recording? I knew that it would be translated into their language, so I acted like an angry adult.
The young man says.
I gave them a proper chewing out. Then I told them to put the damned back. Then I told them to put Donald back.
I look over my shoulder at Donald's body as it lies motionless on the other side of the gate.
That was generous of you. But I believe Donald is beyond help.
I say.
Oh, that's too bad.
He says.
Other than wanting to tear me apart and eat me, he seemed nice. Something will come along and fetch his corpse,
I say.
but I cannot say when. It may be tonight. It could be a millennium from now. Hell works on its own schedule when it comes to these things.
I return my attention to the young man and then remember something.
Crap!
I say, and rush over to the clipboard. The checklist has dots of blue blood on it, but they'll be gone before long. It's not the first time the clipboard has been through battle.
Rule number 14.
I say, and wave the clipboard at the young man.
No one goes through the gate unless they are on the clipboard. Grimlow knew better and paid the price. But how does that work with the damned?
The young man asks.
I don't understand that part. The damned are pre-checked in the city by one of the above's emissaries.
I say.
The procession is only our responsibility when it concerns Rule 13. Do whatever it takes to protect the procession until it passes through the gate.
The young man says.
Exactly.
I say.
I should call this in. Why?
The young man asks.
You already reported the violation. The procession has made it through the gate, and the damned are on their way to their fate. Job accomplished.
I stare at him, puzzled. He's right,
That is a correct interpretation.
I say.
Maybe that is why I am treated so poorly when I call. Perhaps I have overreacted too many times. The Midnight Watchman who cried wolf!
The young man says and laughs. I smile and clap him on the shoulder. Then I step past him and set the clipboard back where it goes. I also set the nightstick where it goes. Once the items of my profession are in their proper places, I take off my coat and my hat. I give the guardhouse one last look before I step past the young man again and out onto the road.
What are you doing?
The young man asks as I hand him my coat and hat.
Why are you giving me these? My shift is over.
I say and shrug.
Well, almost. Can you recite the rules as you have learned them? Probably.
He says, still confused by my gift of the coat and hat.
Then do so.
I say.
Now,
He clears his throat and says,
1 is, you are the Midnight Watchman and nothing else. 2 is never leave your post. 3 is if you hear or see something, you count to 12, wait and observe, then investigate. 4 is always keep your nightstick with you when you leave the watchman's house.
He pauses and glances over his shoulder at where the nightstick rests.
Don't worry about that.
I say.
Keep going. All right.
He says warily, but does continue.
5 is 3 warnings, 3 questions, nothing else. 6 is no mercy, no second chances. 7 is assume nothing. 8 is anyone inside the guardhouse has sanctuary. 9 is report violations immediately. 10 is once an attack happens, all bets are off.
He stops and swallows hard.
11 is always tip the delivery wraith.
he says with emotion in his voice.
12 is deal with your issues.
He closes his eyes and shakes his head, then he opens his eyes and looks directly at me.
13 is do whatever it takes to protect the procession until it passes through the gate. 14 is only those on the checklist are allowed through the gate, no exceptions. Excellent,
I say and look past him.
Can you fetch the clipboard, please? Yeah, sure,
He says, setting the coat and hat down on the steps as he stands up. He reaches in and grabs the clipboard, then starts toward me.
Don't forget the nightstick.
I say. Without even questioning my comment, he reaches back and grabs the nightstick as well.
Here you go.
He says, and holds both items out to me.
No, they aren't for me anymore.
I say.
You should put the coat and hat on.
Again, without question, he does what I ask.
Now you look proper.
I say, and cock my head toward the gate.
Care to do the honors? Me?
He asks.
You.
I say. He nods and follows me over to the gate.
What are we doing?
He asks.
Take a look at the clipboard.
I say.
There should be a name at the top. Read it to me.
He glances down and says,
Paul Verdon.
I close my eyes at the mention of a name I have not heard in so very long. Then I open my eyes and look at the young man.
The 15th rule is your shift ends when your replacement learns all of the rules.
I say.
Oh,
The young man says, then he gets it.
oh, if you will be so kind.
I say, and nod at the gate. In a language neither of us understands, the young man recites the words that I taught to him just this night. There is a flash of light around the gate, then a loud clang as the lock disengages and the two halves swing outward toward me. I walk through the gate and onto the path of my true fate. But I turn first to look at the young man.
You know my name, but I never did learn yours.
I say.
I'm the Midnight Watchman.
He says.
Nothing else. As it should be.
I say and start to turn. But I pause and give the Midnight Watchman one last look.
A word of advice? Pay special attention to rule number 12. Deal with your issues.
The Midnight Watchman says.
That,
I respond.
I have a feeling your parents didn't just die. The same as with how my family didn't just die. Thank you for the advice.
The Midnight Watchman says to me.
Good luck, Paul Verdon. I think my luck has run out.
I say as I turn to face the road to hell. I start walking and don't look back, even when I hear the gate close behind me. Thanks for listening. If you enjoy these stories, be sure to subscribe to the podcast and check out some more of my episodes here.